I awoke to the blaring sound of the emergency alert system, a jarring accompaniment to a noise I'll never forget. It was a sizzling sound, like the air itself was in agony, mixed with what sounded disturbingly like human screams. These eerie sounds were muffled only by the relentless downpour hammering against my house. Oddly enough, as a seasoned storm chaser, I hadn't heard a whisper about a storm brewing tonight. This was unusual, especially given the ferocity of the tempest raging outside. The cacophony of creaking trees, snapping branches, and distant shattering glass pierced the night. I bolted out of bed, propelled by the knowledge that a storm this fierce would surely leave a trail of devastation. Hastily, I threw on my clothes, my mind racing with thoughts of assessing the storm's impact and potential damage to my property. As I grabbed a flashlight from my nightstand and rushed downstairs, my foot nearly slipped in an unexpected puddle at the landing. Baffled, I paused to examine it. A steady drip from above was eating through my ceiling. How was it penetrating the roof, I wondered, my heart rate accelerating. In a chilling response to my unspoken question, the flashlight's beam revealed the puddle on the floor, hissing and bubbling, as if the rain was corrosive, slowly consuming my wooden floor. A sense of dread washed over me. I raced to the front door, flinging it open, only to witness a scene from a horror show. My neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, were frantically trying to reach the safety of my porch, but the rain, it was like nothing of this earth. Their skin was blistering, peeling away in sickening layers, as if the raindrops were droplets of acid. Blood mingled with the rainwater, painting the street a gruesome red. Their screams were muffled by the storm, but their faces contorted in agony spoke volumes. It was a sight so macabre, so utterly inhuman, that it was seared into my memory. Frozen in horror, I finally managed to shut the door, my mind reeling from the terror I had just witnessed. This was not a natural phenomenon. I've chased and studied storms all my life, but nothing could have prepared me for this nightmarish reality. Determined to understand the nature of this lethal storm, I quickly donned my heavy-duty rain gear and waterproof boots, grabbing my most reliable equipment. My heart thudded in my chest, a mix of fear and adrenaline fueling my actions. Stepping back outside, I braced myself against the onslaught of the deadly rain. Clad in protective gear, I was momentarily safe, but each acidic droplet that landed on me sizzled menacingly, a constant reminder of the peril I was in. I reached my truck, parked in the driveway, and my heart sank. The acid had not spared it. The once robust vehicle was now a disfigured shell of its former self. The paint was marred with grotesque, bubbling lesions, and parts of the metal frame were visibly corroded. I hesitated, wondering if it was even safe to drive. With few options left, I decided to take the risk. Climbing into the truck, I was acutely aware of every creak and groan of the compromised structure. I started the engine, half expecting it to fail, but it roared to life, a small miracle in the midst of chaos. Driving through the deserted streets, the scale of the catastrophe unfurled before me. Homes were partially dissolved, their structures weakened and crumbling under the relentless acid assault. The streets were hauntingly silent, save for the eerie sound of the rain and the occasional distant, despairing cry. As I navigated the treacherous, acid-washed streets, the truck groaned and protested. Every turn, every bump sent a shiver of anxiety through me, wondering if the vehicle would hold together long enough to get me to safety. Reaching the outskirts of town, where the land began to rise, I was greeted by an apocalyptic vision. The storm, a monstrous swirl of dark clouds and violent lightning, loomed menacingly over the landscape, its center a vortex of unimaginable fury. The acid rain continued its relentless descent, each drop a harbinger of unspoken horrors, marking the start of a fight for survival in a world turned nightmarishly alien. The storm intensified, the sky a roiling canvas of black and deep purple, illuminated intermittently by jagged forks of lightning. The air was thick with the stench of destruction, a pungent mix of burnt metal, disintegrated wood, and something far more sinister, the odor of burning flesh. As I navigated through the apocalyptic landscape, my headlights revealed horrors that would haunt me for the rest of my days. Animals, caught in the open, lay in grotesque heaps, their bodies mutilated by the acid. The once familiar streets of my town were now an unrecognizable wasteland, littered with the remnants of what used to be homes, cars, and lives. Suddenly, a figure loomed in the road ahead, causing me to slam on the brakes. My heart pounded in my ears as the figure staggered towards me. A person, or what was left of one. Their skin was blistered and peeling, clothes disintegrating, eyes wide with pain and terror. I wanted to help, but as they reached out, they collapsed, their body dissolving into a sickening pool on the asphalt. I drove on, every fiber of my being screaming in horror and disbelief. The storm was alive, a monstrous entity feeding on everything it touched, and in its heart, I sensed a malevolent consciousness, as if it was deliberately seeking out its victims. The hallucinations started soon after. The rain seemed to whisper in voices only I could hear, a cacophony of screams, pleas, and sinister laughter. My mind, pushed to its limits, began to fracture, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. Then, amidst the chaos, I saw it again. The figure. It stood in the distance, its form barely discernible through the downpour. This time, it beckoned me towards the heart of the storm. A part of me knew it was madness to follow, but another part, driven by an insatiable need for answers, compelled me forward. I abandoned the truck, its structure now perilously weakened, and ventured on foot. Each step was a battle against the wind and the acidic rain, which now seemed to burn even through my protective gear. As I approached the figure, it dissolved into the rain, leaving behind a trail of whispers that led me deeper into the storm. There, in the midst of the tempest's fury, I found it. The eye of the storm. A surreal calm enveloped me, a stark contrast to the chaos I had traversed. In that eerie tranquility, I realized the storm was not just a natural disaster. It was something else, something otherworldly. The air shimmered with a strange energy, and the ground pulsed as if alive. It was as if I had stepped into another dimension, a realm governed by the storm's malevolent will. And then, without warning, the storm spoke. Not in words, but in visions that flooded my mind. Images of a dark entity summoned from the depths of human despair and madness. The storm was its manifestation, a physical embodiment of unspeakable horror unleashed upon the world. The storm's revelations had ceased as abruptly as they had begun, leaving me gasping in the muddy ruins of a world I no longer recognized. The visions that had assaulted my mind, those ghastly images birthed from the abyss of human madness, clung to me like a second skin, impossible to shed. I stood in the eye of the storm, a deceptive haven of stillness in the midst of chaos. The eerie calm was a contrast to the relentless fury that surrounded it. As the eye began to collapse, the winds howled, a symphony of terror that seemed to mock my very existence. I knew then that my fate was sealed. I stumbled through the ravaged landscape. Buildings lay in ruins, their structures eaten away by the rain, the air thick with the stench of decay. The screams and pleas of the dying were carried on the wind, a haunting chorus that underscored the nightmare unfolding around me. The storm seemed to follow me, its eye ever present, a malevolent observer to my futile attempts at escape. The rain intensified, each drop burning through my protective gear, searing my flesh with excruciating pain. My vision blurred, my senses overwhelmed by the relentless assault. Then, in a final act of defiance, I turned to face the storm. I screamed into the howling winds, a primal, despairing cry that was swallowed by the tempest. I knew there would be no rescue, no salvation. This was the end, not just for me, but perhaps for the world as we knew it. As I stood there, resigned to my fate, the storm converged upon me. The winds whipped into a frenzy, the rain falling like a curtain of death. I could feel my skin blistering, my flesh yielding to the unrelenting acid, the pain unimaginable. In my last moments, as the darkness closed in, I thought of all the storms I had chased, the thrill of the hunt, the beauty of the tempest. But this storm was different. It was a predator, and I, its prey. And then, amidst the agony and terror, I understood the true horror of the storm. It was not just a harbinger of destruction. It was a gateway, a portal to something far more terrifying. The entity that had shown itself through the visions, the dark heart of the storm, was now unleashed. As my consciousness faded, I realized that my story was not a tale of survival, but a warning. The storm was the beginning of the end, the opening of a door to a realm of darkness and horror beyond human comprehension. The world was on the brink of unimaginable terror, a world where the storm was just the first whisper of the nightmare to come.